Pat McGrew again, and back for another great session. And I want to thank everybody for hanging in with us. We are coming down to the final run, but we've kind of saved the best for the last day in a lot of ways, because we have Drew Sprague, who is our fearless leader when it comes to all the technology you know and love at Solimar. And the cool thing for me is that I haven't had a chance to sit and sort of, I refer to it as chewing the tech, Drew, with you for some time. And usually it's over the phone and it's sort of connected to some specific thing. And this time we get a chance to talk about vision and the cool things. So welcome to this session, Solimar Evolved.
Thanks so much, Pat. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. It's a real pleasure to have you with us. I know you're all busy, and we really appreciate the time you're taking here to share your thoughts, those of you who are on the panels. Also, Kemal and Keith, thanks so much for your input. Pat, you always do an amazing job with presenting information that's helpful broadly to the industry. And we're so grateful to be able to help make that available for people to enjoy. I'm especially grateful, Jonathan and Marianne, they do a great job putting these user conferences together. It's a lot of work, a lot more than it seems. And I get to just kind of come along for the ride for the most part. And hopefully I'll be able to share a few things. Although I'm not fearless, I just don't like to share what my fears are, Pat.
Oh, well, no, so we're just going to call that fearless, that we're just going to call it that. So, you know, one of the really cool things I think we got out of the Kemal and Keith conversation was that they'll be coming out in October with this brand new post-composition study. And I know they've worked closely with Solimar on it, so I think we're really excited to see that get published, right?
Well, absolutely. You know, there are a lot of people that don't really understand the benefits of post-composition. And every time we get a chance to share the message of the benefits it brings, it can help somebody. We've enjoyed a long history, almost 30 years now, of helping people with exactly the kind of problems that their study is going to cover. And so, you know, there are different players in the space. We have many capabilities we bring, others have other things that they bring. But I think it'll be most useful for people to get to see that study and review it and give us a call if they've got some questions.
So the really cool thing about Solimar, from my point of view, you know, if I think back to the early days of Solimar, when I still had my software company, I mean, we were sort of on similar but different paths, and Solimar was always an innovator. And one of the things that happened over the last, we'll call it couple of years, is that you had your thinking cap on and you were listening to your customers, and you managed to turn that listening into a net new product for Solimar called Ready PDF. And spoiler alert, the Key Point Intelligence people have just granted an award to Solimar for Ready PDF for innovation. So congratulations on that. But, you know, what can you tell us about Ready PDF, how it got to where it is, but maybe where it might be going?
Well, Pat, in your presentation earlier, you talked about the history of PDF. And so, you know, the PDF spec was published in 1991.
Doesn't it make you feel old?
Yeah, that was our birth year, 1991. Yeah. It took us a few years to get on the bandwagon, as it did everybody else. As you mentioned, they just about killed Camelot, right?
Oh, yeah.
Until they decided, well, let's give away Reader. And then it started to get some traction. In about 97, we thought, okay, this is going to have some legs. And in fact, it has had a lot of legs. And the Ready PDF innovation has really been a very natural evolution, as most everything that we have done has been a natural evolution. It's so hard to look to the future and say, oh, here's where we're all going. And so you make some hedged bets. And I'd have to say PDF was a pretty safely hedged bet. But as people have imbibed the inkjet Kool-Aid, right, it's made it obvious that there's a need for more optimization. So much workflow now is in PDF, and so much PDF content is created with really secondhand kinds of tools, you know, shareware and stuff like that. And so, yes, indeed, there can be problems. And also just the nature of the content getting produced is more often in short runs. And so those short runs need to be aggregated so that they make sense in a production environment. And so it's kind of a natural fit to produce our special brand of optimization, which is really targeted at high volume content.
You know, a customer of mine said to me not very long ago that they have never, ever in the history of their production output received a file from a customer that was perfect PDF. And in fact, most of the PDF they receive, because it's been through multiple platforms, multiple transforms, multiple, manipulations, by the time it actually gets into production and heading for the DFE, let alone the archive, has gotten so bloated that it's almost unrecognizable from what the original intent of PDF was. And it seems like Ready PDF does an amazing job of creating something that is much more archivable and much more rippable.
Well, we're certainly trying to do our best with it. And as with any software product, it will evolve over time. And so we've got a lot of features yet to implement in Ready PDF. As you know, with your experience in the way back when you were building software, you never run out of stuff to do.
It's true. Are you willing to share any of the secrets? I promise I won't tell anybody.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, no problem. I mean, obviously, we want to make it even easier for people to use. We want to increase the amount of analysis and reporting that we can provide people.
Excellent. Yeah.
That's a bottomless pit. It's the rabbit hole of PDF, right? Is delivering a lot of actionable information to people so that they understand what is in the PDF. Because PDF is scary for people, as every data stream is, right? But they get so much of it, and they see implications as they're using so much clever content, widgets and layered content and so on and so forth, that it can have an impact on performance, where in the past the data streams were so much simpler, they really couldn't impact that much.
Yeah.
And so we want to help people self-triage their situations.
Great way of putting it, because PDF really is the lingua franca across all the printing segments. You use PDF in packaging and wide format and sign and display, and not just transaction, not just DM, not just pure commercial. So it really is cool.
Yeah, and as you know, there are really only so many experts in the industry at large, right? You look at the spec development, there just aren't that many people. So compared to the number of PDFs that get produced, which is in the billions, and the number of experts, say under 100, something's got to give, and it has to be a lot of automation through software.
Yeah, it's funny. You look at the standards committees, and it's the same people you and I have known for more than a couple decades, right? And
they do a great job. They do a great job, but there's not many of them.
Yeah, and we need to start getting that next generation trained, or we're never going to be able to retire.
Well, I was never planning on retiring, and I'm sure you're not either. There's just other activities you got to get onto.
Not really.
So, yeah.
I get that. So look, as you mentioned, Solimar, you're going to be 30 next year. Solid middle age. Good time to take stock of where you are, but you're a company that innovates all the time. So I know that the people who are involved in the conference, all your current customers and your partners, are interested in knowing, kind of what's in the back office right now that the elves are, whiteboarding and brainstorming to make their workflows even more powerful.
Yeah. Well, as has been pointed out many times, visibility is really important. Security is really important. Yeah. We are busy helping the print operations floor adapt to more visibility and more security. And that comes from making sure that the content is secure. Oftentimes print information travels pretty exposed through the data center, right? Especially when it comes to getting it to the printer. So PDF is a great vehicle for doing that. IPP is one of the ways that we're helping people conceal information, because you can have a secure session between wherever the data resides and the print device that way. JDF also provides that vehicle, and JDF also provides a mechanism for feedback. So you can find out, as you talked about, how much ink was used, how much paper was used, what kind of other events happened on the printer during the process of printing, because the printer can report that information, but if it's kind of trapped on a printer UI and not exposed to the dashboard that controls everything, it's not reportable, and people often don't know what's going on. So those are some of the things that we're working on, is helping the facility ops part of the printing business do better.
So dashboards have become a really important part of the industry, especially as you have organizations that have lots of remote print locations, but now even their workers may be located in a lot of different places and not necessarily sitting in the production room. So basically what we need to keep an eye out for is even more expanded dashboarding capability from the Solimar products.
Well, certainly, and it's not just presenting what jobs are running now, it's tracking it all the way down to the pieces. And when those pieces actually get delivered, not just to the USPS, but to the actual recipient, all that information is important. Providing a proof and approval workflow where you can suppress content, whether it be, preference managed kind of situation where you roll it out electronically only, or both print and electronically. And so we've tightly coupled our SolaTrack product, which is the one that primarily targets job tracking, with SSE, which is targeted primarily at archiving and e-delivery. And so between the two of them, they provide a hybrid that does some pretty amazing things, including giving some very granular control over batching, and which is really appropriate for inkjetting, right? And a number of other functions, and I don't want to get too deep into the technology stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the things about the Solimar technology is that you and I could probably spend like a day on each one of the features and still not run out of things to talk about, right?
Well, yeah, there is a lot of technology, and with a big client base like we have, it's evolved very organically. So we have a lot of users that have no idea about the breadth of product, because all they really have is a very tactical problem they needed to solve.
Right.
But we have a lot of clients who just keep absorbing more and more of the technology, because it provides greater and greater benefit for them as their business evolves too. We're all in an evolutionary process of a business that was very discrete, post to print, and now it encompasses so much more.
What excites me so much about a lot of the PDF technology that you've created is that while it grew up understanding data because of the transaction clients that you've served, you can see it really expanding, because variable data and variable content are expanding into so many other segments. I had someone telling me the other day about their new program for doing variable content wide format signs. I'm like, okay, right? Yeah. And you can see that adding more and more automation into those workflows might be really valuable for those organizations too. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, for sure. As we've all seen, we're saturated with information, right? And so there are really two compelling needs. One is personalization, so it's relevant to you, but also needs to be simplified. There's just way too much content, which is really the bane of a lot of the traditional transactional content, right? There's just more information there than people can absorb. So how can you package that up? And again, SSE has some answers for how people can extract information, package it in digestible amounts, and then make available other stuff if you actually want it. So definitely we're aware that the consumer's tastes are changing too. And we're trying to be an enabler, basically plumbing for people to put the infrastructure in place that allows them to adapt to these consumer tastes that are changing.
It's so cool. So Solimar, because PDF is in your DNA and you've been a member of all the different, standards groups and participated in sort of defining what our world of PDF is going to look like. I know that PDF is constantly evolving. I talked a little bit about it in my presentation with there used to be one PDF to rule the world, and all of a sudden it's not that way anymore. There are 20 different kinds of PDFs. And PDFA just came out with their new beta standard for rasterized content inside of PDF. What do you think is going to happen with PDF?
Well, a lot of good things. Greater adoption of the 2.0 features, I think, will be important. Embedded in that is better encryption, because the original encryption is not very good encryption. Yeah. And the 2.0 and the ensuing generations will make that a lot better, a lot more secure. I also do like the kind of layered instructional information that you can now have that's been approved by ISO. I think that ties in very nicely with the kind of workflows that JDF enables. So as automation proceeds beyond just getting stuff into print and then into insertion, you know, it's going to touch a lot of other finishing devices out there because there are other workflows. And many companies that are only one thing right now, for example, maybe they only print utility bills, may find that they want to take on other kinds of business that aren't a stretch because they have capacity to do so at times when they're not, for example, printing utility bills or whatever. Yeah. And I think those kinds of innovations that are already embedded in PDF will make it even more useful. Of course, there are other applications for security. We're really fond right now of the concept of obfuscation and redaction, both of those, because you know, CCPA and GDPR, they've got some time under belt yet, but it's really not fully adopted mentally by people what the implications are. And we coach people every day on how to be more secure in what they reveal outside their organizations. It's a constant education process, and enabling people to do a better job of that, releasing only the information they need to get help on an issue, or obfuscate stuff to make it basically fictional, or redact stuff that you present to a consumer, but you don't want somebody accidentally looking in and seeing information. Those are important pieces, I think, of the PDF puzzle. And
they are huge, Drew, because we've seen so many companies sued over private information escaping the four walls of the organization. And while we haven't seen a lot of fining yet out of, say, CCPA, history on the GDPR side of things from Europe tells us that that will come, right? Yeah, and now we're watching other states start to adopt those same models.
Yeah, and you know, other features like just tagging. Forget about PDF UA, which is a very technical approach to tagging. But tagging in itself has some merits because it allows you to repurpose the content to do some other clever things. And so, yeah, we embrace tagging. We've got some really nice features for that. So that people can really leverage PDF as an on-ramp to other kinds of workflows that they want to be able to execute.
So as I said in the beginning, I think you and I could probably do this technical chew the tech thing for hours on end, but sadly, we've come to the end of our time for this time. Now, what I'm hoping is that we'll get a chance to do it again before very long. But for this conference, I think what everybody should take away, I hope, is that you've got this amazing vision for another 30 years of innovation with PDF. So it's good that you're not planning on retiring. and I'll be there by your side, you know, cane in hand, walking along here. But thank you so much for your time, and I hope everybody who's listening will hang around with us because we still have the implant panel to go. So again, I'm Pat McGrew. You've been listening to the charming Drew Sprague, and we'll get on to the next piece of the event.
Thanks, everyone.